If you'd like your students to have more choice and autonomy in the classroom, you're not alone. So many of us have wished that our students could have more control and more say in the classroom. We've wanted them to develop those leadership and self-regulation skills to prepare them for the future, but we're not quite sure how, and we don't really know where to start. Well, today is the day that we can start to change that. This is the first video in a 4-part video series called Our Class, Our Voice. And I'm about to introduce you to a teacher whose students run the classroom about as much as she does. My name's Matt Miller, author and creator of Ditch That Textbook, and I'd like to introduce you to Gina Ruffcorn. Gina is a 5th grade teacher at West Harrison Community School in Mondayman, Iowa. She's taught for 19 years, and she's been the one and only 5th grade teacher in her whole district for 13 years. Now, that's impressive by itself, but what will impress you more is her students and what they do. In Gina's class, her students have classroom jobs that they do on their own. They make classroom decisions together by voting. Gina's classroom has been designed to put learning in the students' hands, from the flexible seating choices she makes to the room decorating that she does, which is none, because the students create the learning environment together. She's the pink-haired teacher in room 508, and I can't wait for you to meet her. So please meet Gina Ruffcorn. Gina, hey, thank you so much for joining us. Are you like as excited as I am about this?
I'm pretty stoked about this. I can't lie. This is pretty killer. Hearing you say the name
Yes.
of the, it just stops me dead in my tracks.
Right. Yeah. No, I hear you. And yeah, I'm pumped about this. And so let's just jump right into this. Our very first video is something that we can help equip some of the teachers that are watching today, because it's something that you do in your class, and it's something that would translate over very nicely, I think, to what they do in the class. And this first video happens to be about voting. Voting is something that, really any K-12 classroom can benefit from. So, Gina, can you just sort of tell us why voting is a powerful part of the classroom that you and your students have built together?
Here is the reason I like voting so much, because voting doesn't cost you anything whatsoever. And it really gives the kids an opportunity to feel like they've got a say in how things happen in their day, which makes them easier to deal with sometimes. It doesn't seem like a big deal to us, but if you're a kid and you never get to make a decision about how your stuff's going to go, just being able to decide simple things can make a huge difference in your attitude, your behavior, the way that you feel about the rest of the activity. Giving them that little bit of a decision-making factor rather than dictating something to them makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I know from, my high school Spanish classroom days that even little decisions like that with the bigs, this isn't just for the littles, this is for the bigs too. It makes a big difference. So what kinds of things do you and your students vote on? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
We vote on all sorts of things. We vote on things like, do you want the lights dim or do you want the lights bright? Personally, I don't have a stake in this. I can work whether the lights are dim or whether the lights are bright. But if the kids could concentrate better and could focus more when the lights are dim, we vote on whether or not we dim the lights. We vote on whether or not we run reading before spelling. Ideally, both the content areas are going to be taught, but it doesn't really make any difference to me which direction we go with it. So if my kids one day want to get reading out of the way and would rather do spelling later, that's completely fine with me. Holiday decorations, probably the coolest thing. I know a lot of teachers knock themselves out trying to figure out how to make that room look absolutely perfect. And then they also spend a lot of time trying to maintain that. And I am here to tell you, if you put those kids in charge of it, you'll never have to maintain another decoration in your life, because the kids will have ownership of it. And now it's theirs. And they're very particular about the condition of their decorations. So we vote on what games we want to play for practice. If we're using a different website, we'll vote on that. We'll vote on whether or not you want to pick your own partners or whether you want to pull sticks. We've got popsicle sticks in our room. And, sometimes As much as your best friend wants to work with you, you know your best friend is not very good at some of this stuff, and their attention center may be different than yours. And so it gives the kids an opportunity to decide, do I want to work with my best friend who I always work with, or would I rather pull a popsicle stick and possibly draw somebody who's got a little bit different focus when it comes to getting things done? So it's a lot of really simple things that don't sound like much to adults. But if you never get to decide anything, then you never learn how to do it.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And I love how you mentioned that sometimes kids have their reasons for voting one way or another. And I think if we try to just assume that we know exactly why a kid is going to vote, that's kind of an unfair thing because they really think an awful lot into these votes sometimes, right?
They really do. They put a lot of concentration into those votes because there are times where if we've got a big topic, you can vote for, if we're deciding on a movie for a 9-week party at the end of a 9-week term. Sometimes they'll get something where they can vote 2 or 3 times until we get the field narrowed down. And once you get that field narrowed down, they're very, very concerned about how their vote is being counted.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about classroom jobs, I'm sure, in one of the other videos, but I have an official counter who counts all of the children's hands in the air. So that way I don't have to worry about whether or not I missed Susie in the corner because I thought she was doing something else and she in fact was attempting to vote. So
Yeah.
the more control those kids have got over the situation, the easier it is for everybody.
Yes. Now, how do you guys take vote? You just said this, and you started to describe this just a little bit, but you're not the one that's actually like counting votes. Like, how does this work?
I will say, we need to begin our reading journals. Do you want to work with lights on? Do you want the lights dimmed? And they'll all look at me and I will say official counter. And the official counter will pop up out of their chair and they will say lights on. Everybody will raise their hand. They will say lights dim. Everybody will raise their hand. Majority rules, 0 arguments. If you did not get your hand up far enough, that's on you.
Yeah.
And the official counter's word stands. So it's really incredibly easy and quick. Once you get the routine established and your kids understand that they're going to get to vote on things, if you say official counter, my official counter will appear out of whatever area of the room they're working in, and no problem whatsoever. They understand completely what they're supposed to be doing, and their rule stands. Nobody gets to say anything whatsoever about the final count.
Yep, absolutely. Do you have times when you don't raise hands, like you don't do a public vote per se?
There are moments where if I'm concerned that somebody's feelings could possibly get hurt, or I'm concerned that people will be unduly influenced by the folks that they hang out with the most in the lunchroom or at recess, then we do this thing that I call super secret squirrel voting.
I love this.
Is first it was just super secret voting. And then somehow there was a squirrel that got involved in the situation, and I'm uncertain. The best I can remember, somewhere I must have come across a cartoon character or something whose name was Secret Squirrel. And so then it became super secret squirrel voting. And so kids are very amped by the idea of super secret squirrel voting because it sounds silly. So, I mean, I'm not advocating that if you have high school kids, you super secret squirrel vote, unless
But maybe.
had them at some point in 5th grade and then they still think that's hysterically funny.
Yeah.
So there are times where we'll super secret squirrel vote where they won't even put down their name. They're just going to vote yes or no or vote for whatever it is as opposed to whatever they don't want. And then those votes come to me for super secret squirrel counting.
Okay.
And then the official counter and the classroom secretary will stand up at the front of the board and they'll tally the votes. But nobody gets to see anybody else's handwriting because they're 5th graders. And my kids will do that sometimes.
Yeah.
And you know, the upper kids will, no matter what, they know what their friend's handwriting looks like.
Right.
I don't want anybody catching grief at recess because you didn't vote the way that your best friend thought you should have voted. So for instances like that, where I'm concerned about, like I said, feelings getting hurt, or I'm concerned about people not voting honestly just because of the peer pressure, we super secret squirrel.
Nice. Nice. Very good. That's cool. Okay, so when it comes to voting, when you have students doing this, like what are the benefits of this? Like how do you know that it's worth doing? Once you've voted for a little while, how do you know that this is actually something that's worth doing?
I keep I keep all sorts of notes and things that my kids have written over the years. And I do checks frequently with the kids just to see what's working well, what's not working well. It doesn't seem to make much sense if I'm trying to do something that I think that is supposed to be working and they can't stand it. So I'll do a pulse check, is what I call them. Oh, about once every 9 weeks, unless something odd appears for me. And most of the comments that will come back, somebody inevitably will mention voting more than once because they like to have a say in how things go. And so there's two really great examples now. They like to vote on lots of things. It makes it important to them that they've got some amount of choice in their day that's otherwise primarily ruled by adults.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. So I got to ask you, whenever you turn things over into kids' hands like this, it makes us wonder sometimes, so I got to ask you, have you ever had any doubts about putting so much control into the kids' hands? Like, have you ever second guessed yourself on it?
Before, it made sense to me to start doing it because I thought there were days where it felt like I was paddling upstream with only a half broken oar in my boat, and I couldn't quite figure out why the boat wouldn't go any farther. And
Hmm.
I thought, why am I not asking them whether this works for them or whether it doesn't? And the more I thought about that, I did all the usual worries about, will it be complete chaos?
Hmm.
Will there be a way that this could be put into the classroom that isn't going to take time away from everything else that we've got to do in a classroom?
Yeah.
Then you kind of worry, are the kids going to think that there's something wrong with me if I
Hmm.
can't make these decisions for them?
Right.
It, that doesn't make much sense when I say it out loud like that, because kids like to think that you're human too and that
Yeah.
you care enough about them to give them a say in things. So once I figured out that they weren't going to think I was weaker and that anarchy was not going to break out everywhere, and
Yeah.
after I tried a few, the more comfortable you feel with it, the easier it comes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Okay. So there you have it. Let students decide by voting. And they get to vote on all sorts of non-essential items and make the vote secret when you need to. It sounds like a small step to help equip students to be leaders, to make their own decisions as they get older. So thank you, Gina. This has been fantastic.
Such an easy thing to do, such massive payoff.
Yes, absolutely. Now, we are just getting started. This is just our first video in our 4-part series called Our Class, Our Voice. And our next video shares a strategy that Gina uses to build relationships with her students and provide the educational experience that each unique class needs. And that strategy is surveys. She mentioned a little bit about this today. And surveys are something that you can use no matter what you teach on the K to 12 level to connect more closely with your students. And Gina's going to share the types of surveys that she uses, some questions that she asks, and how they play a part in building voice and autonomy in her classroom. But now we want to hear from you. So before you leave, would you add a comment to answer one of these questions? If voting is a part of your class, would you tell us about it and give us your best tips? And if it isn't a part of your class, but you'd like to try it, could you tell us about that? Like what you might want to try, what your students might want to vote on, like any of that. Feel free to leave a comment just down below. Also, if you know someone who would love this video series, you can send them to this link, ditch.link/ourclass. That's ditch.link/ourclass. Or they can sign up for email updates by just going to ditchthattextbook.com/101 to join our email list. Again, that's ditchthattextbook.com/101. So thank you so much for watching this video, and we'll see you in the comments and in our next video. Take care.
Thank you.